Now, what we have in Midsummer Night's Dream is a world that's out of joint, out of sync. Things are backwards and retrograde. The, it's living through one of those periods that are familiar to us in life. That everything seems to be going wrong, and normally we can't see the causes of that. Sometimes things seem to go right, and sometimes they seem to go wrong. We don't know what the difference is, although we experience the difference. Here in this play, because the playwright can show us anything, we see the realm of magic that gives some kind of explanation. But the view in the play is somewhat the view of the people who believe in astrology, that the stars are in line or out of line, that there's some great powers that make things work or make them stop working. And this is the context for an examination of love. Now, whether Shakespeare actually believes in this theology or just plays with it because it's fun to imagine, that's not the kind of question that Shakespeare ever answers for us. He hides himself and his beliefs behind his play, and that's probably as it should be. We just have to take what's here. But let's look at the situation. Why are things out of date? We see in the very beginning, why are things out of sync and out of alignment? We see at the very beginning here at the start of Act 1 where the big event we're waiting for is the wedding of Theseus and Hippolyta. So we'll see that in Act 5. That's what all this action is building up to. But Theseus is a very powerful human being, half god, half mortal, the ruler of ancient Athens. So an important character. Hippolyta, important in her own right, the queen of the Amazons. And we have things slightly mismatched and out of sync, as Theseus says. I won thy love doing the injuries. He's taken Hippolyta because he's a great warrior, and he's won the war between the Athenians and the Amazons. So the human political institution dominated as the world goes by men having a war with the tribe of the Amazons, where women rule, and things have sorted out properly, at least according to the conventions of the world, that the women have been defeated and the Athenians have won, and the leader of the Athenians is to become the husband of Hippolyta as his wife. But this makes a transformation. The war and the hatred between them has to be turned. So line 16, Hippolyta, I wooed thee with my sword. And so that's doing things the wrong way. Trying to date a woman by getting together an army and attacking her country. That's not the way it's supposed to work. That's opposites. And one thy love doing the injuries. Well, that's not how life is supposed to work. But I will wed thee in another key. So turning the facts that govern their relationship so far into something else. And that's somehow the problem of love and the ability of love to change things, to turn two independent people into a couple. It's a major change. How does that happen? And it's a similar one or an exaggerated version of this problem between Theseus and Hippolyta. Theseus seems worthy being a husband because he's a strong man, a ruler, and a leader. But this puts Hippolyta somewhat in shadow, and the two of them have to sort this out. In the play, we just get a little description of the difficult situation that Theseus and Hippolyta are in. They've been living life the way it is often lived, through hatreds and antagonisms, and they have to turn that hatred into love and a marriage. And ordinary mortals have a version of that conflict. And, the scale is smaller for people who aren't the children of the divine gods like Theseus and Hippolyta, but we have the same conflict, and we see the conflict on a human scale with Aegeus and Hermia. Aegeus wants to assert the privilege of the Athenian law, so very very human thing to live under the law. And the law says that Aegeus, as the father, gets to tell his daughter whom to marry. But she has fallen in love with another man, so she has her own ideas about what would be good and what would be right. So this again is a difficulty. The world is out of sorts at the highest level of the rulers of human things and of ordinary mortals, so ordinary citizens. It's also out of sorts because of this difference between this disagreement between the older generation and the younger, and then to go to just the level of the young people. They also are out of sorts because they're not falling in love in the most convenient way. So this is illustrated. There are two young men and two young women, and if one of the men would fall in love exclusively with one of the women and the other man with the other woman, then things would sort themselves out. And Jack shall have Jill, as Puck will say at the end of the play. And everything would be correct, and things could go on to the next generation. The young people become middle-aged and then old people and have children in their turn, and life goes on. But the young people are not doing these things right, so that they're mixed up. That both of the men are in love with the same woman, leaving one of the women out of it. And this is causing them problems. They can't all get along with one another. When Hermia and Lysander try to solve this problem by running away from her father and the Athenian law to take their life for themselves, then Helena screws this up. And Demetrius gets involved in making a mess of everything. So the world is out of sorts, and we've seen this is true on the highest level too, because Oberon and Titania, we meet in Act 2, are not getting along with one another. They are fighting over the loyalty, the possession of a beautiful Indian boy whom we never meet. Sometimes productions of the play will show him. The 1999 Hollywood version does a good job of including this boy. But they're fighting over this boy, and they're both in love with him as adults are in love with children at times. And Theseus wants the boy to be a follower of his own, to be part of his party, but Titania is determined to keep the boy with her and not give him up. And these two are a couple, but independent. There's a choice involved here. So the greatest of the divine powers are not getting along, and that seems to be the reason or the explanation for why nothing else is going right. The logic of this play works like astrology. So the stars are retrograde. They're going in the wrong direction. Therefore, all smaller things are tending to go wrong at this moment. I talked in the first video about Puck and what the level of the fairies does on Earth. They make things that are chancy and dicey, that they make them either work out or not work out. So you can set out your cider and normally it ferments, and set out your apple juice, normally it ferments and turns into cider, and this is necessary, otherwise you just have a whole bunch of apples in the fall and they'd all spoil before you could make any use of at least most of them. But if life is going to go on, you need to go through this process of making cider. It's a bit of magic, and it ends up making life enjoyable because you get to drink and enjoy the cider. But it doesn't always work, and when it doesn't work, we are powerless to explain why, and we reach for explanations that somehow things are out of alignment in some invisible level that we can't know. We can just see the results that things aren't working well, and then this play makes that view of the world and how it works real. And, and of course, when it comes to love, the truth of this vision, this theology, this understanding of how the world works, when it comes to love, the truth of it is confirmed for us. Because we can see in love that it is one of those bits of ordinary magic. Since it happens regularly, you can count on it. It's a thing of our experience. We can't say it's magic because it's just the way life works, in the same way that apple juice turning into cider is just normal. On the other hand, you can't say it is normal. It must be magic because the transformation is so strange. And how does it happen that one other person is the happiness for another person? How can we be so important to us? How is it that your connection to another person can turn the world upside down and change the value of all things? Well, that's not normal, any more than cream turning into butter is normal. Cream and butter are not like one another. They have different properties. And the juice left over from crushing an apple is just a plain thing, and it's not at all like hard cider. And the experience of drinking it is nothing the same. So butter and cider and love are all things that can't be called normal because the change they make is so extreme that it doesn't fit into anything that deserves to be called normal. And yet they're things that cannot be called magic because it doesn't seem to take anything special or unusual or extraordinary to make them happen. They're the most common thing in the world. If you leave out your apple juice, you should expect it to turn into cider. And if you shake cream, you should expect it to turn into butter. And if you put young people together, you should expect them to fall in love. It's normal, but from another perspective, not normal. And the transformation with apple cider is the way it is with love. That a married couple and their children are not anything extraordinary, not anything special. There's some middling level of happiness and content. In the same way that a glass of hard cider is not anything earth-shaking or poetic or magical. It's just kind of a nice thing that makes life more pleasant. And of course, it's in some way just a necessary thing because otherwise, we'd eat in the fall and starve in the winter because we hadn't found some way to preserve our crop. The time of plenty, we hadn't found a way to extend it into the future. And the same thing would be true of lovers if the magical moment when they're falling in love and changing the world for one another and having the poetic experience of finding a person who represents your happiness. If we didn't have that, then we couldn't make the transition to the duller and more necessary phase when the young lovers are now parents themselves. That's that bit of ordinary life and also astonishing magic has to happen to move into the future. So my general point here is that there's a connection between parts of this drama. What the fairies do in their theology is they take care of the ordinary things that sometimes happen and sometimes don't happen, which are somewhat magical but also completely ordinary. And love is one of the highest and most important of those things.